Before we go any further, what you hear on this podcast is our perspective as CRNAs. It's not medical advice and it doesn't speak for any hospital or employer. We're just two providers having the conversations we think need to happen.
Okay, so we've both established that we would do it again.
Yes.
But I wanted to go back to the actual moment. So for me, there was an exact moment when I knew I was like, I definitely need to get out of the ICU. So I need to do this. I didn't hate it every day. So basically when I got into ICU, it was all like the glam and the glitz and it was just like all the things. And I was like, oh my God, like this is great. This is where I want to be. I quickly realized that there were just too much unfortunate events and just, it was a lot, like running codes all the time. And I knew I wasn't going to last in this field if I didn't change, right? I need to go for it. So the moment for me that made me decide that I knew I needed to get into school, I needed to get in quick, and this was definitely not going to work for me at the bedside. So I was precepting a student, and she was one of my favorite. Actually, she might be a CRNA somewhere now because she wanted to do this. And you know how we used to document the patient's sacrum with a picture, right? And put it on the chart because we wanted to make sure that any breakdown from outside or on the other floor, that their skin was intact, or whatever pressure ulcers they already had developed, it was going to show that it was not developed anymore with us. So that way we didn't have to pay for it, yada, yada. We know the story, right? And I had this patient that was probably 500 pounds and she was sweet, but every time I had her, my back would hurt because I had to turn her a ton and do all this stuff. The day that I knew that I was not doing this again, a friend of mine was coming in with the picture, with the camera to take a picture. And it took two of us to turn her. And my back hurt so bad. And so I remember the moment I was in this sweater that I'd wear all the time, this gray sweater. And my back was hurting, turning. And I was like, I can't do this. And at the time, I made my mind up in that very moment. And I'm so over it because I'm like, I physically can't do this job as long as I thought I wanted to because there's just so much that comes with it, right? And that's when I knew I can't, I gotta go, I gotta get out of here.
Oh boy. That's a tough one.
That was my moment. That was my moment because I was just like, physically, I can't deal. Let me tell you, she was a great patient to have. But I mean, at that time, I was 6'2", and I was like 100 and... No, I don't need to even say that because people are going to be like, I hate you. But off to the side, I'm a twig. Basically, I'm not this strong man. I'm not this like big muscular man. Not that I'm big muscular right now, but you know what I'm saying. I got a little 20 pounds or whatever on me. But anyway.
I don't think people realize the physical demand of the job.
Oh my God.
This patient at this weight, but it's just you have nurses of every size and ability also moving grown men. And it's a lot, especially if it's a patient that is completely incapacitated. It's moving an entire person. It's not easy.
No. And then the contraptions that you had to use in order for certain things. This patient, for instance, we couldn't use certain, was it the Hoya lift? Because the Hoya lift would not support. Oh my God, that's back in the day, the Hoya lift. There's still a Hoya lift. That's probably like a Hoya lift 4.0 because we're like freaking dinosaurs now. We've been like bedside forever. Isn't that crazy? Been CRNAs for that long where we're just like, we don't know if certain things exist anymore.
Yeah. Things that exist. The PureWick didn't exist when I was an ICU nurse.
Right?
Yeah, but like that wasn't a thing. I discovered that in the OR one day when I was like, what the heck is this? Hooked up the suction. And did you have PureWicks when you were an ICU nurse? PureWick, you know, the little pad that you put on a woman so that she could pee that's not a Foley and it connects to suction? You didn't know.
No, that's what I'm like, wait a minute. No, I was 0 days old. I was today years old.
Yeah, instead of a Foley, it's a little pad that you put in their private area. And when they urinate, the suction sucks the urine out.
No,
Yeah.
never heard of
You
it.
have to Google that. I had no idea that even existed, but that
Wow.
definitely did exist when I was in the ICU.
Wow, that's crazy. Didn't even know that was a thing. Here we are.
Yeah. Here we are.
Welcome to Clock Out and Connect, the podcast about what everybody's thinking, but no one's saying.
I'm Shantall, CRNA, mom, wife, and professional worst case scenario planner.
And I'm Marc, a CRNA, dad, and the guy who makes the hard calls before most people finish their coffee.
We work in high pressure environments by day and come home to real life, family, ambition, and everything in between.
If you're thinking it, we're talking about it. All right. So, when did you know that it was time to leave the unit, or you had to keep your trajectory and you're just like, it's time, I can't do this anymore? What was your nah, I'm good moment?
Ooh, so that is a tough one for me. I don't think I had a specific moment that changed it all. I think it was a combination of multiple factors. One of them being the patients are getting sicker. That's the given
Yeah.
across the board. Our population up in Washington state, we had a lot of drug addicts too. So that was a little tough watching people struggle with that. And then there were the politics of things. So, like, the hospital was getting busier, more pressure was being put on to move patients, get in, get out, all of these things. We were actually starting to take on a lot of patients from the ER because the ER was so backed up, because the house was so full, like all this stuff. So, here I am doing 3 or 4 step down patients. And I'm like, when did I get into the step down? This is supposed to be the ICU. And that started to really weigh on me a lot. Aside from the physical toll of the job, like week by week, it just started getting harder and harder. And I think I finally got to the point where I'm like, you know what? I think it's time to go. I think it's time to move on. I give much props and respect to the nurses that I worked there for literally decades, because it's not an easy job, but I couldn't hang. I'm sorry, couldn't hang. So off I went to animal school.
I would honestly piggyback off of you. That was a big moment for me, but I'd say there were many other small moments. Like the shift work was different. It was like nonstop. And then the expectation is from one person, right? I can only do so many things. There's no way I can take care of. I'm sure that staffing ratios have changed and rules and regulations since then, because I've heard of a few things. In our time, I feel like it was, or maybe they weren't abiding. I don't know what to say, but I know that it was a lot and it was just too much for one person. And I knew that if I kept on doing this job this way, something bad was bound to happen and I couldn't keep up. And I didn't want to do that. I'm supposed to be a patient advocate, provide safe care for my patients and doing stuff. And just the fact that you couldn't read the handwriting on the chart, that was enough for me to want to quit. That's before things are computerized, right? You go to the nursing station and you look at this chart and you hieroglyphics, and then you would have to like decipher what this is saying. And it would take a few people sometime. You're looking at a chart for one order for 10 minutes. 10 minutes on the floor is like an hour, okay?
Yeah.
You got a lot of things that happen. And I have to pee. I haven't peed since this morning, and it's now 5 o'clock. And now I'm trying to, yeah, I'm like, and now maybe we need that. What's that thing that you said that sucks to pee? Yeah, I'm like, this is crazy. So that was one of the things. I was just like, no, there was a lot. There was a lot.
It was a lot. I agree. So now throwing it back to episode 1, where we talked about if we would do it over again, knowing what we know now, obviously we both said yes, but knowing what we know now too, that yes has so much weight and meaning behind it.
Man, sure does. It's heavy.
Yep.
All right, so let's go deeper, right? So we've talked about this a bit in the beginning, a little bit earlier, but like, what did it cost you? What else? What is the depth of the cost? What's the buy-in?
Oh boy, there's so many things. I think on the surface level, I think we could probably all agree as CRNAs that, like how I say in the intro, I'm a worst case scenario planner. That's legit. Like, I feel like I plan A, B, C, D, and E with everything I do.
Everything.
And I'm always planning for the worst. Like, my head immediately always goes to the worst case scenario. And what do I need to do to mitigate those circumstances, or if things go wrong, do I have everything that I need? Like, I literally have first aid kits in each of my cars. I do choker in every room of the house. So that like anxiety of things that can happen to your family or kids, it's real. And like, you don't just shake that when you walk out of the hospital. So
No.
that's one. I think after anesthesia school, I legitimately felt lost for a good chunk of time. I don't even know if I can tell you how long it was, but I did not have a sense of self. I did not have any direction. You spend your whole life aiming for this giant goal, and then you do it, and then it's done. Now what? Life goes on, right?
I feel like there should be like a re-assimilating program for anything healthcare. It's insane because
Oh,
you
yeah.
plop us out of reality, right? And then we go into this other world that no one understands except for the people that are in it. And then after you're done being tortured, then you come back out and you're just like, oh yeah, just now get back to reality, get back to your life. That never is the case. You never get back to that because you're never the same person. It's impossible. It's impossible. And I remember a preceptor saying that to me. It's like, once you do this, you know you'll be changed forever, right? You won't look at life the same. You won't look at simple things the same. Just going down like this list of things. And I'm just like, this guy's wilding out. Like he's so doomsday. It's a lot. And he was right. It just took a little bit for me to realize it afterward. So what do you think about like how does that apply to you? You know what I mean?
I think that's really a good way to describe it, because I was a different person, and that actually leaked into my marriage too, because it wasn't that I didn't want to be married or be with my husband anymore, but you got to remember we also spent so much time apart while I was in school with his deployments and me being busy and just not present, that we had to learn each other again. I do still distinctly remember how different it felt, like when I left for the army, when I went back on active duty, like to when I got out of school and he came home from deployment for graduation. And I was just such a different person in a matter of 3 years that we kind of had to go through another growing period, if you will, because it just wasn't the same. And it wasn't that it was
Mhm.
bad. I don't know. I was just different and it changed me. So therefore it changed our marriage, but not in a bad way. It's hard to explain. Not that it wasn't tough and that we didn't go through our trials and tribulations or anything like that, but it was just different.
Yeah.
How about you?
There was a lot of costs. I feel like to start off for the list, it cost me friendships, it cost me family time, it cost me vacations, it cost me holidays, it cost me weekends, it cost me sleep, it cost me marriage, right? Like literally we were married 9 months and we go off and thank God we were friends for a while before we got married, and because I wouldn't really know who she really was. You're talking about taking somebody out of their habitat and going to a different place, not just school, right? Because even when you're in your community, say I went to school in South Florida locally, it'd still be hard. But then we leave everything we know and we go at that and we have to assimilate to new things, new places, new directions, like physically, right? A new geographical area, like new cultures, because South Florida culture is very different than Northeast culture, right? And it costs us a lot, like in the sense of just those things, just list wise. But it cost me my personality that I had before, right? I wouldn't change it because I'm grateful because I was so naive and unaware of so
Oh,
many
yeah.
things, right? I think of course, you can do it because people do it, but like, I think because of the hardships of school, it made me a better parent, better husband, a more vigilant person, a better provider than I would have been at the bedside as a nurse. Not to toot that in any way, but like I didn't understand some of the things that I was even doing as a nurse at the bedside until I became a CRNA, and how dangerous some of these drugs that I was working with were and the comorbidities and how that worked. That cost was a good cost to pay because of the
True.
understanding that we would have now. But there were a lot of things. It costs you your confidence, right? Because you are rebuilt. The thing with being in anesthesia that was very clear to me when I started practicing, especially in my residency, is that you cannot hide your deficiencies as a bedside nurse. You can hide from most because if you have that one nurse that you switch stuff with and be like, hey, I'll do your NG tube if you do my IV or all that
Oh,
stuff,
yeah.
right? You can swap all day and not many people will know. And you can start working on things. You become an anesthetist when you are CRNA, when you're practicing in the clinical arena, no one, you can hide from no one.
Yeah.
Everyone sees your deficiencies. Everyone sees how not good you are all the
Yeah.
time,
Oh,
every
yeah.
day, every missed intubation, every time you put there in the goose, every time you missed the A line, every time you messed up that block, you didn't hold the ultrasound right and you took forever. Everyone, not just your preceptor, the surgeons, the scrub techs, the residents, everyone's in that room, the nurses, the circulars, they're looking at you and they're waiting for you. So it is just a huge spotlight on how terrible you are. And it is hard. And then asking you questions from Nagelhout that you don't even remember, like during intubation. I'm just like, I barely know what I'm doing. This is the first week. Stop asking me these Boyle's Law and all this stuff. Stop it. You know what I mean? Stop talking about all the stuff. It's just a lot. So it costs you your confidence because it is broken down to be rebuilt. And if you're not ready for that, you're going to suffer. You're not going to make it.
It's something that you mentioned that, like, in the topic of not knowing what we didn't know, like, I definitely had no idea that's one of the costs, that you will have to be broken down and be rebuilt again.
Mhm.
And that's a tough one to swallow. Like, you really got to tuck your ego away and be like, okay, this is for
Yes.
something specific, patient safety. Like, the idea is we're making providers that are going to be safe, are going to take care of patients, are going to save people's lives. And so the process to get there is pretty rigid. I will say that I don't believe in hazing. I feel like there's line between adult learning where we haze people versus just being tough on people so that they do better. And
Yeah.
well, another subject, of course. So I want to zoom in a little bit more about, like, on these costs, right? Because we obviously have our personal costs, but like, now you're in the thick of it. You're in CRNA school.
Mhm.
There's no turning back. There's no turning around. There's no plan B here, even though we're always planning for everything, but there's no plan B. So, what kept you going? What kept you from quitting when it got so hard, when it got dark? What made you keep moving?
Man, there's a couple of things. So I think for me, and I mean, I'm sure I'm speaking for everyone on some level, you think to yourself, okay, I fought my way here. It was so hard. I had to take so many tests. I had to be so good. I had to make sure that everything was maintained. Now I'm here and this is hard. And even though I want to quit, like, what am I quitting to? What is the backup plans? Because at this point, especially being a civilian, different program, USAGPAN is a little bit different, but like, I have a bunch of student loans now. I have
True.
racked it up. I have a pretty nice house of student loans. And what am I going to do? What the goal is to get through this so that we can get paid and have this lifestyle that I think is what's going to make me happy, which it is great. But like at the time, you don't know, you're thinking about that. I can't even imagine the people who have kids, right? You have kids, you have to feed these kids, and your spouse is probably like working a job that's not going to pay them anything close to what you're going to make. And you got to be the breadwinner. So you got to get through this and you got to pass. So that pressure. Then also, this is what I think people think about. And let's be real. It's just, okay, so now you leave the unit and you're the person that gets into CRNA school only to hear that you couldn't make it and you're a failure. So the fear of failing is so immense. It's intense. It's just, no, I got to get through this. You get through this for yourself, for your family. I remember thinking to myself, I remember there were tests that I would take. I wouldn't do well or I just barely make it, right? And make it past. I'm just like, I can't continue like this. And I'm just like, what am I going to do if I fail? What would I do? You know, what does my life look like? I'm scared, what do I do? Like, I'd have these pictures in my head. I was like, maybe if it doesn't work out, I'm just going to run away. I'm not going back. And that's terrible, right? To say, because that happens. People flail out and it's horrible. And I can't imagine, because it could have happened to any of us.
It could have.
It, it could have happened to any of us. But you need to, when that does happen, now that I'm on the other side of it, I have so much to say about it, but the place you need to run is to your support, not away from them.
100%. And then on my end, you mentioned I was USAGPAN active duty. I would have had to, if I didn't make it, I would have had to stay in as an active duty ICU nurse. So I think just the notion for me of having to go back bedside was a big motivator. I didn't want to do that. But
Yeah.
on top of that, now I'm in the military with zero control in where I'm going to go, where I'm going to live, what kind of job I'm going to have, or the schedule that I'm going to have to follow. Like, at least as a
Mm,
got to be on day shift, for instance, but like I wouldn't have that choice in on active duty. And so that was another huge motivator on top of all of the other things that you mentioned too.
yeah. Send us your whys. Like, why did you continue? What were your costs? Let's talk about it. I'm sure we're not nailing all of them down. These are the obvious ones, the big ones, but there are probably some really unique situations that we're not thinking of right now. So please DM us, write us all the costs, the things. Just let's dig into it.
Yeah, slide into them DMs.
Yeah.
But no, yeah, we would love to hear from you about what it cost you, what your career, it doesn't have to be a CRNA anywhere you're at. What did it cost you? What did it take for you to get there? What did your family members, your friends, everybody around you say and do, with that change? Because anytime you grow, I think it always is going to cost you something. You gain a lot, but it does have a cost for sure.
So now talking about the cost, right? There obviously cost regardless if you take the USAGPAN route or the
Mhm.
civilian route. So for you, why did you take the USAGPAN route, and what were the benefits and the not so good things you'd say that went with that, with your choice?
So I think we touched on this a little bit in last episode. Part of the reason I decided to go use SAGPAN was hopefully being stationed with my husband, which, as we know,
Mhm.
didn't quite work out the way we thought it would.
Yeah.
Um, so that was one, but also the stability. So I will say it was obviously a huge motivator knowing that I would come out of school without that debt. They paid for most of my nursing school, so I didn't have that debt. So this was a logical choice in my head. But not only that, I was going to be getting paid as an active duty officer while I was in school. So I didn't
Clutch.
think about money. Yeah, that
If
was,
I knew that, I would have totally done it. I didn't know any of this stuff. And it's great for people to know out there that this is an option, right?
yes. Yes, it is an option, but it's not free. It is
No,
free, but it's
nothing is
not free.
free.
Nothing is free. So yeah, I had full health care. I had a full salary. Housing was covered. Anything that I had to worry about was taken care of. Oh, here's another good example between military and civilian programs. If I went on an out rotation to another hospital to learn whatever skill, the Army paid for it. Like, they paid me to get out there. They paid for my flight, my rental, my hotel, any food costs that I incurred, that there was a stipend that I would get. So it was never a worry about money. Like, I never had to worry about money, which I know is a huge deal, especially knowing in the civilian programs that you got to come out of pocket for a lot of those things.
Hmm.
So what are you doing? You're taking on debt to do it. And so, not that it isn't worth it and not that you won't be in a career where you can't pay it off, but it was a legitimate plus on
Yeah.
the end. But that also comes at a price. So what's the price? Your freedom, right?
Right.
Like I said earlier, if you fail out, you're still on the hook for your time on active duty. You're just going to be in a different capacity. And if you make it through, which thankfully I did, sometimes you don't have a say on where you're going to get stationed. You're obviously signing up to fight for your country. So deployments are on the table. Duty outside of your current station are on the table. I was attached to a unit in Korea while I was in Hawaii. So what a lot of people don't know is that you may be stationed in some place, but the real hospital that you're attached to might be in a completely different country. And for me, it was Korea. I was very fortunate that the timing worked out. I didn't end up actually having to go. There was a couple times that I was slated to go. Unfortunately, one of those times my grandmother passed away. So that's what diverted me from there. And then the next time I was pregnant, which was a good thing because we were really trying. And so those are some of the things that you have to consider is you're going to be away from your family, even if it's just for training. You could deploy. There's a number of things that can happen. And on top of the fact that I really didn't have a say in my schedule, we're pretty lucky in Hawaii. They really tried to give you what you wanted, but at the end of the day, the mission had to be complete. So if you had to work the nights, the weekends, the shifts, the holidays, no post call day off was common.
Right.
And so those are the things that you're exchanging. Plus, I was paid during school, but then as a CRNA, I'm still receiving the same pay. Unlike someone that gets out and then can make a lot of money to pay off those debts, I was not making that money. So it was a back and forth because at the same token, I'd get a housing allowance. So it wasn't like I was living terribly. Like I was definitely comfortable, but I was not making the same salary that, let's say, you were making when you graduated.
Yeah. The other thing to add to some sites, which is nice with USAGPAN, when you get out, you can sign up to do ODE, right? And so that's nice. So that can give you an extra chance to make some extra money at certain places. There's certain stations, I think it was like Irwin or something like that. There's no hospital in sight or somewhere. I think I remember that one clearly, people talking about, and they're just like, yeah, you can't make no money out there because nothing.
Nope, you sure can't. And then it also is at the whim of your leadership. So for
Yes.
us in Hawaii, it was like a year-long process. And for those that don't know what ODE is, basically
Oh,
you can moonlight outside of work in the hospital on base. And over there, it was like a year-long process to get approved to do it. So it really depended on your leadership, where you were stationed, what the situation was, if they were going to allow you to do that or not.
true. That is true. So yeah, very different than the civilian program, but sometime a different flavor works for different people.
Yep. And I have plenty of classmates that did their contracts and went back to the civilian life. And then I have many that stayed in. It just really depends what your goals are, what you're comfortable with. And there's really no right or wrong answer. You just got to do what's best for you.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Okay. It's officially off the record time. So, Mark, so if you had a brand new CRNA fresh out of school sitting in front of you today, and they asked you one thing, not about anesthesia, about the career, what would you actually say? Mind you, this is off the record. So it's got to be something that you probably wouldn't say aloud to many people.
Okay. You are going to encounter some really crazy people. Just being honest. Not just like in anesthesia. To be honest, it'll be in other disciplines. There are going to be surgeons that are just ridiculous. They throw instruments.
Oh, yeah.
Is wild. I'd say just get ready for like bizarre personalities and just not just bizarre personalities, but people that you know and love and trust that have big issues that you have to support them and love them through it. I say that because unfortunately in our field, it is very known that people drug use, right? It's because we have such access to some of the most powerful drugs on earth that we give people every day.
And it's such a stressful job on top of it.
And it's a stressful job, right? And it's crazy. Every person that I have heard, and I think I have a good discernment, but every person that I have known, I've found out that they were using on the job. I was always shocked. I couldn't believe it. And unfortunately, I've had the displeasure of knowing great people that have passed from using drugs on the job. And if you know something, I'd say in that regard about someone, you really need to say something to someone because you are the only person that could possibly save that person's life and get them help. I think that's something that's off the record that we don't really talk about a bunch because it's so taboo, but I think it needs to be normalized because it's real and you could be friends with someone that you love dearly and trust at work, and they're wonderful, and they're going through hell and you have no idea. I guess too, what I'm saying is, even those crazy people, just try to be kind and really figure out why. Everybody, there's always a source in why people are acting the way that they are acting and doing. And it's hard because we all have our stresses and our traumas and our drama, inside work, outside work, right? But just try to remember. That's why I try to say to myself, I'm just like, there is something that is leading this person to be this dysregulated. And especially if you have a good relationship with them and other people don't, just be that support for them, because you never know, they might tell you. I have heard things that I didn't want to hear and I didn't want to know from people that I love, and I wouldn't discourage them from telling me this. So if you are watching this and you know me and we have had conversations about certain things, it's not that I don't want you to tell me. It's just so heavy. And I guess that it made me realize now that we all need someone, especially in our field sometime, to talk about certain things. So just remember that, new grad. You're happy, you're excited to take on the world, and it's going to be great. And you're going to do all these wonderful things. You're going to help save people's lives all the time. But remember the people are around you and why they're acting the way that they're acting, and try to, you know where I'm going.
Such a good take on that, because I think sometimes when people are nasty to us, the initial reaction is to just
Yes, to be nasty.
angry and be nasty back. But sometimes you really got to stop and think about, what is this person going through? And obviously it doesn't make it okay. It doesn't make any of that okay. But if you can be a person that really empathizes with others and realizes, hey, this person's obviously got something going on, it helps take the weight off of that, off of you a little bit, I think, anyway.
Yeah, for sure.
So, for our audience, what is something that you would tell somebody freshly in your profession that you wish somebody had told you, perhaps, that something that we don't routinely talk about? We would love to hear about it. Leave it in the comments, send us an email, get in our DMs.
Hey, slide.
All right. So far, we've talked about why we said yes, what the yes cost us. But next episode, we're going to talk about what it costs the people standing next to us. Yes, we're going to talk about school and marriage, this career and marriage, and what it has done to our relationships.
I think this is going to be one of my favorite episodes to talk about, because it's such a big topic, it's such an intense topic. And that's one that a lot of people don't talk about, because I think it's such a sacred thing, your marriage, and, you know, being vulnerable in your marriage period is hard, right? So then now to talk about two humans that, you know, might be having issues to other people is just not a thing. But it should be normalized, because when you feel like you're not the only one going through something, it can make the biggest difference, and you can feel seen. You're not crazy, you're not abnormal, and we are all going through our version of issues, especially having such duress going through school and being married. We're going to chop it up. It's going to be really good.
So make sure you tune in for our next episode. That's a wrap from us. I'm Shantall.
And I'm Marc. Thanks for clocking out with us today.
If you're thinking it, we're talking about it.
Leave us a review, send your questions, and we'll see you next time. Go home. You've earned it.